So, Katharina, you're from Austria?
I'm from Austria, yes.
But representing?
Representing Paraguay here.
Okay. And Lene?
I'm from Denmark.
Okay, and we've got Jamie, and it says that you're from the States, but I know that when you start talking, you're going to be talking about many, many places other than the States.
Many places.
So we're going to start with Jamie.
Awesome. Tell me when I'm ready to go. Oh, there we go. So this is an 8-year journey. I've been to a lot of places that you represent here, and I want to talk about one simple concept that we do really well at TGS. TGS is the first traveling boarding school. Maybe you've heard about us, but I don't really want to talk a lot about that. I really want to talk about place. And there's two contemporaries in American wilderness movement. One is John Muir. How many people have heard of John Muir? He's the father of the National Park Movement, and Aldo Leopold. How many people have heard of Aldo Leopold? Fewer people. They're contemporaries. And John Muir and Aldo Leopold would have these conversations. Aldo would say to John, like, you're going all over the places. You're not focusing in on the wonderful things that are happening in your own backyard. So TGS is John Muir, and I want you to be Aldo Leopold. And I'm going to let our students do the speaking for us because this is about student voice and choice. And so there are two short films that I want to show. We went through our archives and found one by one of our first graduates. It was done 10 years ago, and it's still timeless today. It's about place. And then I'm going to show you a recent one that a student did just last year, a graduate who graduated last year. So let's see. Hopefully this works. Will this work? I hope this works. The prompt, though, is really important. What would happen if every student interacted in their community once a week in your classrooms? So potentially this could be your classroom. Like a lot of you come from China, a lot of you are in India, a lot of you are from Australia. This could be happening to you right now. And so what our jobs really are as educators is to create these amazing remember when moments. Remember when moments are when you sit around with each other and you talk about what happens. They're the really important things that kids learn. I have a student here who's a student graduate with us here, and Alicia and I have a lot of remember when moments. So this next film is from her graduating class that I want to show you. And these are all student, did you get that one? Okay, good. These are all student design.
Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream. And you would naturally, as you began on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes. You would have every kind of pleasure you could conceive. And after several nights of 75 years of total pleasure each, you would say, well, that was pretty great. But now let's have a surprise. Let's have a dream which isn't under control. Well, something is going to happen to me that I don't know what it's going to be. And you would dig that and come out of that and say, wow, that was a close shave, wasn't it? Then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. And finally, you would dream where you are now.
So it's all about using the places that you have in your own backyards It's all about getting outside your classroom, spending, I challenge you to take one day out of your week and take your kids out of your classroom because there's so many wonderful experiences in your own communities. Our students do this all the time. We're rarely in the classroom, and it makes all the difference. You'll hear from our student later. She's going to do a thing on student voice and choice. But it's absolutely essential that you build relationships with the environments that you are living in. And we do it on a grand scale, but all of you can do it on a really small scale. It's one simple change that can affect everything you do. So thank you very much.
I'm just blown away by that. I'm thinking, I wish I was a little bit younger, and I would have joined you on the next school.
I go on those things a lot, and I'm pushing over 50, so I'm one of those over 50 sucker. Where are you?
Okay, moving on, we've got Lene, and Lene's going to be talking about learning labs. So I'm intrigued. I'm sure you are too. So over to Lene.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about learning environments. And to me, learning environments is a very broad concept, and I just love what you guys are doing, Jamie. To me, it's about finding out how we can create ecosystems of abundant learning for all our children. And for some reason, we've developed a particular interest in how the physical environment impacts how we learn and the opportunities that we have. So we do a lot of work where we look at learning space design and whole school design and really trying to use that to liberate learning for every child. And to do that, we really have to look at how our brains are wired to learn. And I just love what Peyton, you were saying earlier about creating not just diverse environments, but something that's really welcoming every student and engaging everybody. We really want learning environments to be places that help build relationships, that help build that sense of belonging for everybody, and that enable students to learn in many different ways as the learners they are, because we all have different needs, we have different dreams, and our spaces need to reflect that to really help us flourish. So what we are sort of leading a war on is the traditional classroom and the narrative it carries about everybody, same size fits everybody. So how can we turn classrooms like this into classrooms that may look like this if we're just looking at the classroom scale of things? So how can we go from places with one size fits all to places where you can tango or do like dance the waltz or the hip hop, like whatever it is, what kind of learner you are, and feel that it's your place, it's your learning it's all about. And I want to share a little example with you. One of the schools that we've been working with that I just love it. It was a school that really didn't have any funding to change things, but their whole learning philosophy was not coming through in the spaces they had, and the students were suffering for this, and the teachers were not able to be the creative teachers they really wanted to be. So we did a little work, and that's actually where we pioneered the Learning Space Design Lab that I'm going to show you a little later here. Now the spaces look like this. And this, and also spaces like this. So it's like done in really cheap ways. They've created spaces where students can feel empowered to create their own learning environment, where they can act on how they feel, they can build relationships, they feel welcome, they feel at home. One interesting thing that the students are telling us here is, one of the changes it brought is that the teachers are much more quiet now. Yeah. So we talk a lot all the time with students and, of course, with teachers, but with students about the effects this has on them. And so here's some of the feedback that we get from students. How was it before, and what did the change mean to you? So we go from something where they feel it's really teacher-led, that there's a lot of talking at students, and you feel you don't have any influence, to democratizing the classroom, to empowering students, to help them make choices and decisions about how they learn best and how to work on like what they want to do, and also help like that they are co-designers of the learning environment. And I often get the question also about what about students with, it could be special needs, all of that. But we see that this enables every child to flourish a lot better because they are able to act on how they feel and what they need. And we also see attendance going up simply because of calmer environments where people are able to be themselves. So you should think it was pretty sort of easy to just say, hey, why don't we change all the classrooms and have them really reflect how we learn and manifest that. But we found it was really, really difficult. Every time we'd work with teachers or schools, it could be like building new schools or redesigning spaces. Teachers, we would have the most wonderful conversations about what learning is and what they'd like, but they would always sort of regress to the classroom style of things. So we thought long and hard about how could we hack that discussion, and that was when we came up with the Learning Space Design Lab, basically taking everything about we know from learning that if we can do it hands-on, if it's collaborative, so creating a great learning situation for a learning experience for teachers where they co-create. So together they create new types of spaces. So it can look like this, or it really changes the whole conversation in a very easy Lego brick style way. So it enables us now to begin to build schools that are not classroom based and long corridors and that really cater to different student needs. So, and it can also be so very simple as this student created a little room for herself, just a cardboard box. So there are many opportunities, and it really impacts the way students can learn. And just a final point that we also need to remember to create great environments for our teachers to still be learners and really thrive so that they can create the most amazing experiences for our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, on Monday I was fortunate to visit a school in Dromso, and I get it completely in terms of how the environment influences the children and their learning and the rapport and the relationship with the teachers. So from one innovation to another. So over to you, Katharina.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to be here to represent Paraguay, even though I'm not Paraguayan. I am with Fundación Paraguaya. And I want to start out with the goal that we have at Fundación Paraguaya, because we think that setting goals is very important to really getting things accomplished. Our big aspirational goal is a world without poverty where we all want to live. I'm sure we all here agree. Education is key for that. It's not any kind of education, though. It's an education that really helps people to imagine a better future for themselves. It's an education that helps people hopefully experience a glimpse of that better future already during the education. So I want to invite you to just take 5 seconds to look at that picture and think about what you're seeing. We, of course, don't have time now to brainstorm together, so I'm just going to share what this is and what I'm seeing in this picture. So we see here 2 students from our self-sufficient agricultural school in Cerrito. Those are 2 students who are selling the produce that they have produced as part of their normal education. What we see here are not 2 students who are content with a life of poverty, even though they come from very poor communities. We see instead 2 students who know that they can really succeed at what they're doing. We see actually 2 young entrepreneurs who have started to believe that what they do can make a difference for themselves and for their communities. They have not always been that way. What really has transformed them, we think, is the educational model that they are immersed in, and that is an educational model that is based on learning by doing, selling, and earning. So this might sound very capitalistic to some of you and kind of a little bit, but what we have found is that that can be an extremely transformational experience for people who come out of a reality of poverty. And our experience in microfinance as an organization and in youth entrepreneurship has taught us that learning by doing is great, but it's not enough. So I want to give you an example in a nutshell what it is that we're doing at the Self-Sustainable School. We are organized in different educational units that all have the objective of paying for themselves, To give an example, we don't have one demonstration cow that we use kind of as a prop to teach students about animal husbandry or about dairy farming, but instead we have an entire herd of cows that is managed by our students, of course with the help of teachers. And the students do everything from the barn work, to milking, to creating marketing plans, to actually going to markets, or from house to selling the products. What that does is that it first of all teaches every step necessary to not just be a farmer, but to actually live off farming, because those are two very different things. And second, it really helps them to change their personality, to develop an entrepreneurial mindset, and to think about opportunities that there are in life and how to take them. This is a very transformational experience for students. And with that, I'm already in the middle of the question of what a good learning environment is. For us, a good learning environment is a learning environment that is immersive and very hands-on, learning by doing, by selling, by earning. It is a learning environment that's holistic in the sense that it responds to what each individual student needs, holistic in the sense that it responds to what the community needs, and that is embedded in the community as a whole. So we have a lot of outreach to the community. We work with them with a tool that we call the Poverty Stoplight that really addresses the needs of the community as part of the educational model. It's also a model that is extremely innovative in itself, not as a model, but as part of the educational culture. What I mean by that is that a self-sustaining system cannot survive if it is not constantly innovating. So innovation is part of the curriculum for more academic things, for the agricultural part, but also for the school culture. To give one concrete example, the most recent innovation that has come out of this self-sustaining school is a tool that we call the educational stoplight that lets students, teachers, and parents evaluate the educational context along the stoplight colors red, yellow, green. And kind of that helps them to create aspirations as to where they want to be and create concrete plans of how to get there. That really helps to get everybody's voices, especially students' voices, on the table of where they really want to be and what they need to be there. So to wrap up, we think that education is really key to help people get out of poverty, but we need it to be a system that really responds to what they need. We think that a self-sustaining school that puts the students at the center and that puts innovation at the center can really help us to get there. Thank you.
Thank you. A summit such as this is about support, but also it brings in a bit of provocation as well, just the same as the Helsinki Education Week has done this week. And I was at an event earlier on this week, and there was an ed tech provider there, and he talked about school is not a place. And that kind of like provoked me in terms of a lot of schools are the community hub, and it is a place. So I went to Twitter because this is the way forward in terms of getting the consensus of head teachers, school leaders elsewhere. So I put the question to them, is school a place? And the replies ranged from, it's about spaces in between the places and the faces. So I'm going to ask that to you. Is it about place, or is it about place, spaces, and faces?
So the first question you usually ask when you meet someone for the first time is where you're from. It's usually a common question. I think place runs deep in a lot of our students' minds, and they identify with a particular place. Third culture kids are a little bit different, but I think place is very important in our tribal ancestral roots of what is important to us. And that's why I think what we have done in the modern schooling movement is we have actually divorced kids from the community, and they're not as connected to their ancestral roots in their community, and I think that's problematic. And so it's a lot of segregation of kids spending time with their own peer groups, but not necessarily spending time with the people in their communities that really honestly matter the most. And so I'm all about, I think place is really important for kids. And I think it's really important for the more you get outside of your little box and connect with your communities, wherever that is, that's a really important takeaway that we've really perfected when we drop into a country. We spend about a year working with local communities so that we understand the place that we're going to before we actually drop into the place. But having run community organizing kinds of schools in other parts of the world, places, I think is really uber important.
Any thoughts on that question?
Yeah. So is school a place? Not necessarily to me. It's about learning is networked, and even more so today than it was, and it's going to be. That'll grow. So to me, it's about the community and how we can create. Where that community can come together. So it's about tapping into different communities, and we do have schools around, and they are places where we meet up and we can support everybody in growing, connecting, but also connecting outside school. That's super important. And obviously, I want those schools to also reflect, like invite the local area in and be part of, also be distributed in the whole local community as much as you can.
Thank you.
I think space is very important, but in the sense that space is not just like a physical reality, but space, of course, comes with culture attached to it, comes with the people that populate that space. So I think it's pretty clear that students don't learn just from the material that's presented to them, but from observing what's going on around them, from kind of absorbing how people are behaving, what people are doing. So I think if we're talking about educational spaces, we need to be very careful to create a space that is a culture surrounding students that really helps them to aspire to something, that helps them to kind of observe not just what's going on the blackboard, but what people are doing. So in that sense, I think space is extremely important.
Can I ask, in terms of the 3 innovations that we've looked at, in terms of overcoming barriers, which have been the biggest barrier and how have you overcome them?
I'll let you start that one.
Yeah, well, in terms of the innovation, the biggest barrier, well, it was created to overcome a barrier of how could we bridge the way teachers were thinking about learning and the spaces they wanted to teach in. So that was why we created the Design Lab, to really develop a shared language that's not about words, where everybody could come together and prototype. And yeah, it's great working with teachers in that way, and it's also a tool where we can easily get student voice on board and have a whole big conversation around what learning needs to look like and what kind of culture you're aiming to build. What's the learning culture here? So I think maybe the biggest barrier, or what is difficult, is then taking it to the next step. But it really helps get the bridge the thinking and get past the why. So it's more of how do we then do it, and how do we train teachers to work in different ways in those areas.
So for a long time, I've been really concerned about the barrier of apathy with our student population and the lack of engagement, and that it seems like research is showing that the more time a kid spends in the educational pipeline, the more disengaged they become. And so we intentionally decided to design a different kind of learning that would actively engage students in a different way. And the father of that is Cole, who did the experiential learning model, but they've just paired it up with brain research. You should really read the study on that one, how experiential learning is activating all centers of the brain as opposed to didactic teaching, which only activates 1 or 2 centers. And so what you really want to have, and I think is really important, is you want to have this visceral, emotive experience with students that they'll remember forever, and it'll be banked in their long-time memories, as opposed to these short-term learning spurts that you get in most schools today. And so that's what we were actively trying to do with this innovation.
I think for us, one of the biggest challenges that we were facing is when we took over our first school in 2005. It was a school that had been running in the conventional school system. And it took a while to convince everybody involved, the teachers, the school administrators, also the parents and the students, that trying to make money off, as a school, of education is not something that's wrong as a kind of moral imperative. But to see what can come out of it and to kind of be creative with the idea and playing with the idea of what can come out of if we allowed it to happen. So one example, as part of this process, what the school has done was it purposefully stopped to accept any money from the Paraguayan government for teacher salaries, which sounds maybe like, why would we do that? The reason is, if you rely always on outside sources, you have very little incentive to actually try to make the system as a whole work. And that has been a challenge, but I think it really turned out to be a good idea to push through that.
Can I just thank you, all three of you, for inspiring me. I'm sure that everybody else has been inspired as well, and I'm sure you'll get opportunities to talk to the three of them. So thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Lene. Thank you, Katharina.
Thank you.